Hello and welcome back to Lewis the Woodworker. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how I made my router table. I started by making the top, which consisted of a sheet of plywood and a sheet of melamine that I got for free from my mum's work. I just glued them together and clamped them in place. I then made myself a small spacer block so that I could get equal cuts from my track saw, and I cut 8 legs to make my 4 legs. I then cut my legs and my stretchers to the desired length using my miter saw. To make this quick and easy, I would cut one and then line it up with the others and then cut the rest. I then made 2 frames consisting of stretchers and aprons using screws and glue. I then made the legs, which consisted of 2 small legs which I made before, and gluing them and screwing them at a 90-degree angle. I then cut a second top that would support my actual router table top on the leg assembly. I then used my jigsaw to cut out the corners, since a circular saw has a circular blade, as the name says, therefore it doesn't quite cut the whole way through. And then I screwed it to the legs. I placed the top upside down onto my workbench and then lined up the leg assembly so it would be center with the top and screwed it down. Moving on to the fence, I had to make myself a whole massive jig so that I could use my track saw track and my router to make a groove onto a piece of wood that would accommodate a T-track for the fence. Once I cut the groove, I could fit the T-track and screw it down with my impact driver. Make sure to pre-drill the holes here, since I'm using melamine instead of regular plywood or OSB. I then cut my fence in half on the miter saw, since aluminium is easy to cut with a wood blade. Then I made a groove halfway through the board so that I could fit another piece of T-track to accommodate a safety guard later on in the video. I then drilled some holes onto my adjustment fence, which would hold my actual fence that would have some T-track screws and some adjustment knobs. The support fence is just made out of 2 pieces of plywood with some brackets cut at 90 degrees. I then inserted these T-like bolts into the T-track, which would then slide through the holes, and I added some adjustment knobs from the back. I made this a bit more complicated so that this way I could adjust the fence for larger router bits. I then made 2 corresponding T-track slots onto the router table so that I could attach the fence onto that. Once I had the grooves made, I used a chisel to square off the corners. I then snugly fit the track in and screwed it in place. I then made 2 holes onto the fence that would be aligned with the T-track on the table. Moving on to the insert plate, I grabbed enough cut that I had of plywood and rounded over the edges with my disc sander. I then made an offset hole matching my current insert plate using my jigsaw and my drill. Then I could use my router to make a groove-rabbet so that it could accommodate for the insert plate. I then did the same thing onto my insert plate so that it would be flush with the router table. Moving on to the inserts for my insert plate, I cut out some inserts at school with a laser CNC and then routed out some holes onto the insert plate using my router and then cutting them out with my jigsaw. I made these inserts out of acrylic and they have 2 tabs on either side so that you can replace them for bigger inserts. Mounting the router was as easy as centering it with a router bit and then drilling some holes, countersinking them and using some machine screws to screw the router in. I then dropped it in place, making sure not to catch my fingers. You may also notice here that there's a guard at the top of the fence, which I also made at school with a laser cutter. That can also just be bought. I made a decent sized safety guard at school with a laser cutter and a acrylic bender. Sometime in the future I'd like to put proper dust collection and a miter slot. I used a Hikoki router and I will post a link down in the description for you to have a look at it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more upcoming videos. Thank you for watching.